Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Good to see you all this afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the 10th and the final episode of the National Federation of Maldivian Employers webinar series, Tailoring a New Reality Employers Dialogue. Today, we'll be looking at the overall economy of the Maldives, and the topic for the discussion is Road to Recovery, Way Forward for a Post-COVID-19 Maldives. We have a very highly esteemed panel of experts, economists, and analysts here with me. Unlike the other days, I also have a partner today who will be taking part with me as a moderator and a panelist, because I'm also going to be part of the panel when it comes to discussion on the subject of construction. We have a lot to discuss today in this episode, so let me start with the introductory remarks of each panelist. As I always say, that this is not in a particular order. This is how I received it. So I'll just try to introduce one by one. With us here is Mr. Mohamed Jaleel. Mr. Mohamed Jaleel started as a clerk at the Ministry of Finance in 1978 and spent most of the public life as a practicing economist at the Economic Research and Statistics Division of the Maldives Monetary Authority. In the early years, he worked at the Ministry of Finance in assisting in the groundwork for setting up the Maldives Monetary Authority. He was also private part-time consultant to several international organizations. Additionally, he represented at the Board of Governors of the International Monetary Fund for the Maldives between 1993 and 2005, and then the Asian Development Bank during the period 2005 to 2008. In June 2000, he was appointed as the Minister of State for Finance and Treasury and the Vice Governor of MMA, and went on to become the Minister of Finance and Treasury and the Governor of MMA in 2004. In 2005, he was appointed as the Minister of Economic Development and Trade. After completing 30 years of public service, he resigned from the ministerial cabinet in July 2008. The most recent position he held was as the senior advisor to the Minister of Finance from 2014 to 2018. Mr. Jaleel holds a master's in international economics from the University of Essex, United Kingdom. Welcome, Mr. Jaleel. I had the fortune of working with you on several fronts during your tenure, so it was a very good experience and a very good, you were very, how would I say, you were one of the best that I learned a lot from. Thank you very much. Mr. Bandhu Saleem, again, a very close friend and a very important personality in the Maldives on every front. Mr. Bandhu Ibrahim Saleem is a former Member of Parliament from 1998 to 2008 and wore many hats over the past many years. He was the Vice Governor of the World Bank from 1982 to 1987, representing the Maldives. A director of the Ministry of Finance in 1991, Mr. Bandhu Saleem has also represented various corporations as a member of their board, including the Ragu, Maldives Telecommunications Company, Maldives National Shipping Limited, MTCC and MFLC. He was also appointed as the Honorary Consul of Italy in the Maldives in 1999. Mr. Bandhu Saleem played a key role in the expansion of the company Island Aviation Services during his tenure as the Managing Director from 2002 to 2011 in terms of fleet capacity of aircraft and passenger flows and commencing international operations. With over 44 years of experience in his career and holding prominent posts both in public and private institutions, he is a successful businessman and industry expert who has been always available to serve the nation. Currently, he is the chairman of Solarelle Insurance Maldives and the executive director of Cyprea group of companies. I had the pleasure of working with Mr. Bandhu Saleem also on several fronts, and his advice and his way of operations is exemplary to the country and all of us. Mr. Ahmed Naseer. Mr. Ahmed Naseer worked in the Maldives Monetary Authority from 2008 to 2011 as a manager, and later he was the Governor of Maldives Monetary Authority from 2017 to 2019. Prior to that, he was the consultant at the Ministry of Finance, PFM, where he joined from the Capital Market Development Authority, where he was the CEO. He was also the Minister of State for Finance in 2011. He was the owner of White Shells Hotel for 5 years and founded the Guest House Association of Maldives, GAM. He's also the founding member of the Maldives Institute of Economic Research, MIER. Currently, he's the CEO of NIG Capital Private Limited, a firm providing financial services, management consultancy, accounting, auditing, tax consultancy, and insurance services. He has a master's in economic policy from Williams College, Massachusetts, United States of America. I had the privilege of working under him as a board member of the Maldives Monetary Authority as well. Ms. Sujatha Haleem. Ms. Sujatha Haleem is a leading social security and financial services professional with over 16 years experience in the industry. She is most notable for her work in spearheading the World Bank's Pension and Social Protection Administration project, which established the current pensions regime in Maldives, establishing the pension office and the national pension scheme, the Maldives Retirement Pension Scheme, MRPS. Ms. Sujatha is the Chief Operating Officer of the Pension Office and is responsible for the strategic planning, administration, and project management functions of the institutions. She holds a Master's of Business Administration, specializing in financing and marketing, and a Bachelor of Commerce, specializing in finance from the Bangalore University in India. One of the most experienced Maldivian ladies, Maldivians on the social security and financial services front in this profession. Mr. Ibrahim Athif Shakoor. Mr. Ibrahim Athif Shakoor has a BA in economics and an MBA from Monash University, Australia. He has served at senior levels, CEO level, and board position of some of the biggest and most diversified corporate entities in the Maldives. He has been a visiting lecturer at the Maldives National University and at Bilateral College. He is in modest measure a writer and an essayist, and some of his writings are found on www.athifshakoor.com. Mr. Athif also has been a consultant to some of the bigger corporate entities in the country and is presently employed as the managing director of a private firm in the food industry, United Food Suppliers Private Limited. For the past 25 years, he worked individually and with others to heighten the awareness of economic issues. He's the co-founder of the Maldives Economic Review. Thank you, Athif, this afternoon for accepting to facilitate today's episode with me. That's it for me for now. I will hand over to Athif now. Athif, please.
Thank you, thank you, Janah. Unfortunately, this is going to be a duet event with me and Janah. Let me introduce Janah. Mr. Janah is an entrepreneur, a developer, and contractor in the Maldives. He has served in the construction industry of the Maldives for the past 30 years with ventures in the Maldives and indeed overseas. He is the current president of the Maldives National Association for Construction Industry for the 7th term, and the current president of the International Federation of Asian and Western Pacific Contractors Association. There's a lot of initials here. I'm not. Additionally, he's also the president of the National Federation of Maldivian Employers, the NFME, who has been holding this webinar series. He's the owner and chairman of Hotels and Resort Constructions Private Limited, currently developing several of his own resorts, and is also a partner in developing the 5-island resort of Waldorf Astoria, Maldives in Athif. In addition to his advisory roles to many business entities in the Maldives and overseas, he is also the CEO of Kudu Airport at the southern, at Huadu Atoll in the Maldives. Janah has also served as the chairman of the Maldives Building and Construction Board and a member of the board of directors of the Maldives Monetary Authority, the Central Bank of the Maldives from 2018 to 2019. In November 2017, the government of Maldives awarded him the National Award of Recognition in the area of architecture, construction, and consultancy He was also awarded the Maldives Entrepreneur of the Year 2019. Both of us, as I said, will undertake this as a duet, and we'll take questions in posing questions to the panelists and also participating in the seminar as well. So Janah, why don't you take over and start the session, please?
Thank you, Athif, for that introduction and kind words. My first question, there's no particular order again, there's no hierarchy here. We are all panelists and we are moderating. My first question is to Mr. Mohamed Jaleel. Mr. Jaleel, the Maldives fiscal position is weak and its external reserves are critically low. The country has a long history of fiscal and external imbalances. The debt ratio is above 80% of GDP and deficits above 10%. This loose fiscal stance has contributed to current account deficits of over 25% of the GDP and sustained pressure on reserves, which has been compounded recently by large debt repayments. IMF Article 4 consultation September 3rd, 2019. That was before the word COVID-19 came into existence, and people in general did not believe that a pandemic can bring the global economy crashing to its knees during these days of technological innovation. IMF predicts that our GDP this year will be at negative 8.9%, and World Bank predicts that our economy, that will be one of the worst hit in the region, or rather the worst hit in the region. So my question to you this afternoon, the first question is, how and why did our economic outlook deteriorate so badly, and when did we lose our ability to act as fiscally responsible agents? Thank you, and Jaleel, please.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me with such distinguished panelists. I hope I can contribute to your satisfaction. But first of all, to your question, I think what we need to understand and appreciate is that we are facing an unprecedented challenge. Like you said, there are very few countries in the world today who is facing the challenge as much as we are faced. Because we are faced with actually two concomitant crises. First is the adverse macroeconomic trends, the most serious threat to sustainable development. This had been there for quite some time. And then, of course, no doubt, these unprecedented times of great difficulties for households, businesses. The country is now suffering from the consequences of coronavirus, threatening the health and the livelihoods of the population, sharply reducing the economic activity and threatening future growth. The economic shockwaves that is unfolding very rapidly are already fully a global one. So about Maldives, yes, that is true. Maldives, I've recently had a look at the past 40 years. That's something I did really during the lockdown, of how the economy has behaved in the last 40 years. We've seen two distinct periods from 1980. It was a rapid growth period, and that lasted until 99, and then slowed down a more mature growth. The rapid growth was about 11% between 1980 and 1999. That's 20 years. And then following that, from 2000 to 2019, growth has come down to about 5 to 6%, 20 years. I'm leaving the cyclical behavior, vulnerabilities because of external shocks. Mind you, we had 15 shocks during the 40 years, 16th including coronavirus. So that's about a shock in every 2 to 3 years. this growth has actually, the early years was actually the takeoff period. This had benefited, the growth has benefited the country in many ways. We have proved to the world that we are one of the successes in many ways. In particular, I would like to note the huge improvements that we have made in human development. From being one of the poorest countries in the 1980s to today, some estimates are putting us at $15,000 per capita, compared to about a few hundred or less than that in the 1980s. So why we've continuously had deficits. I don't think we really had surpluses except for probably, one or two or a few years. I can't tell you exactly how many, but we've tolerated fiscal deficits in varying degrees, but deficits and deficits and deficits throughout. With those developments, and we've dealt with shocks. I told you more than 15, 16 shocks. What had really happened is, answer your question. Every time we had a shock, we just do a little bit of housekeeping, get a little bit of foreign aid, add a little bit of debt, and then start cruising again. The tourism private sector in this country is unbelievable. Very vibrant. I think very few countries have, particularly the small countries. I don't think there's any small country that we looked often, the SIDS and others. The private sector in the Maldives have been so brilliant. And because of their work in tourism and all of that, we've been able to sail. The ship has been able to sail, but with deficits. I told you, disparity and deficits are very closely related here. I was reading some literature. 1982, the nation embarked on removal of regional disparity. Look, even as we speak today, the disparity is widening. People are coming from all of the other islands into Mali, while the government, all governments, every time, including today, have been putting a lot of money into the atolls. But the flow of population has been moving in, and you know the kind of social problems and economic problems we are having in Mali, even today with the coronavirus. We don't need to look back too long. Here we see it today. So I want to stop it here. This has created deficits. This had created current account imbalances for most parts. We've seen exchange rate under pressure, but then again, like you said, macroeconomic stability, we've been doing that. Restrict the budget for a while, limit expenditures, and raise a little bit of taxes. Again, we start cruising. So that's how we have sustained it. Obviously, the critical question now is, I told you, coronavirus has many similarities to other shocks, but clearly, this is something that has been very, very different in many ways. Tsunami took everything off in one day. I think we lost quite a bit of our GDP, but this is taking it bit by bit. So we've had budget deficits, we have current account deficits, but we were just able to live happily, until something came like this. So I think essentially for now, I want to leave it there. That's how we've tolerated fiscal deficits. Borrowed a little bit, start cruising, tourism does the trick, and here we go. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, that was really good. I think Athif has some more questions to ask you before we proceed to the next panelist. Athif, you have something for MJ?
Yes, I thought we will get Mr. Jaleel to present. He has talked about how we got down here. Now the question is, how do we climb back? You have thought, as in your words, we have done a little bit of housekeeping. we've borrowed a little, and then we have, tourism has taken us back, and then we have continued cruising, in your own words. So now we are down on a precipice. Mr. Jaleel, so what are your recommendations? What are the actors? What are the actions? Who are the actors? And what do we need to do to climb back to safer ground?
Like I said before, it's a very tough question. It's not easy to answer in such a short period. But COVID-19 is issuing the world an unprecedented challenge. Across the world, workers, employers, governments, I think they will all need to work together to minimize the damage done. It calls for immediate action. I think the government and the private sector should jointly prepare an all-encompassing comprehensive economic policy response. I think a well-coordinated and a comprehensive strategy with a roadmap is essential to deal with the health emergency needs, to support the economic activity, and to prepare the ground for recovery. Carefully identifying the roles of private sector, the government, the markets, and financial institutions. I think the strategy also should combine a short-term, a medium, and a long-term initiative, taking account of the spillovers and the interlinkages between our economies, within the economy. We need to instill confidence and stability and credibility in our policies. Close monitoring is essential. And I think that's the vision, that's how we should be working to a sustainable recovery. Collective strategies in business development and marketing. I think we need to identify the roles for the business community, the private sector, and government. They have to work hand in hand, very close communication, coordination on strategies in moving forward. At a very broad level.
Thank you, Vijay. So in other words, ad hoc and individual, work wouldn't work in a situation like this. I have been saying in some fronts, I've been participating in some international fora also like this. In Europe, they had the Marshall Plan after the war, right? So Maldives need a roadmap, as you said, a big plan like this to overcome, and a huge collective effort needs to be put into, override this situation, right? So we all agree to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We'll come back to you. We have more questions. Thank you very much, MJ, for that. And my next question goes to my friend, Mr. Bandhu. Bandhu, as someone who has been involved at very senior levels at the relevant institutions, especially when the country was, transiting from least developed nation to a middle-income country, you have on the practical side of both managing the state and private enterprise, where the rubber actually hits the road. I doubt that the scenario Mr. Jaleel has drawn is neither surprising nor shocking to you, sir. The urgent need for economic diversification have been stated and restated in several state documents and recommendations of multilateral agencies like the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and several others for close to 20 years as of now. At this juncture, we know that this can no longer be delayed or postponed. As a country, we cannot find ourselves back here when the next pandemic or the next natural disaster strikes, or when the world economy collapses as they cyclically do every once so often. So Bandhu, with wealth of your personal experience and knowledge, what are the areas that our economy can practically diversify into, which is to say, in which areas do we have our competitive advantage right now?
Thank you very much. I would thank you for this fantastic meeting, And Mr. Jaleel has given a very good presentation of the last 40 years in a very abridged way. I think the issue as we started was, first, we were an open economy without any restrictions on foreign exchange. That was advantage number one. Flow of capital from development agencies and grants were in the areas of productivity in the early years, that is to say fisheries, infrastructure, education, telecommunication, and also to build some other institutional developments. Unfortunately, all these things did not meet with our manpower development and governance. Why governance? Because of the lack of governance in the institutions and also lack of governance in the private sector, what we have planned to achieve was not achieved. As a result, the capital was put into the atolls or islands. It is only for infrastructure and other support projects. But it has not gone really deep into the atolls or islands where they should develop and manage their own development per se. From dark days to electricity, from non-telecommunication days to telecommunication and Viber and WhatsApp, today we have everything when we want. The issue is the governance in the public sector as well as private sector. Let me again say, in today's, even in today, in Companies Act, there is no bankruptcy law. How we are going to handle the bankruptcy? Unfortunately, we all expect, God forbid it doesn't happen, but some bankruptcies are likely to happen. So that is number one. Companies Act needs to be very clear on bankruptcy and the governance on private sector and public sector. Are we playing on a level field? Perhaps no. Because state-owned enterprises play a major role and they have preferential treatment by the state. Whereas the private sector has a difficulty in many ways in terms of market expansion, access to capital, access to labor, and training of labor, and also to put savings. Lastly, I would like to support Mr. Jaleel as we expand on investments by grants and very low interest long-term capital. Our savings were very, very low. Still, our savings in this country is about 8 to 10% of GDP. Whereas like Solomon Islands or in Seychelles, it is 15% of GDP. Of course, we have some islands where there are very island countries which has very unusual savings, like Kiribati minus 50% of GDP, unfortunately. But I think places like Vanuatu and Fiji, they have plus 15, so which is a very good sign for development. Forget about South Asia, we can't be competing or comparing South Asia with Maldives. And as a result, I think the savings habit still seems to be on consumption rather than saving. Why? Because since the savings are not there, Jaleel has said private sector has done a lot of savings, a lot of investments in tourism, which is fantastic. But where did the capital come from? Borrowing. And that is still we have to repay and interest rates are high. Therefore, over the period of last 7 to 5 years, our national foreign direct private investment has been at 10% of GDP, which was Mr. Jaleel was pointing out. The prosperity of the nation grew at foreign private investment as private sector investments that brought foreign exchange into the country and benefits to the economy. Having said that, let me say, we did not plan our labor to our management of the economy, even in simple terms of tourism sector, medical sector, engineering sector, and also the construction sector. Apart from menial sites, we need all these engineers, studying, I think, computer sciences in terms of word processing and etc. is not going to help us today. We have much more in artificial intelligence to see that we can go. I think the question of recovery, I think this is a very major issue. It is not going to be easy. It is going to take 2-3 years. But the only hope I can see is expansion of fisheries, and the markets for fisheries will remain, I think, buoyant. And I think government authorities and private sector also start investing in fisheries, giving long-term credit to them. And this is the way we can develop and diversification at the moment. So I think for the time being, I will stop here and pass it to you, Janah.
Thank you.
Next question is for you, Governor Naseer. The need for stable and quick adjustments in our economic context has been highlighted here. And, diversification of the economy. And very often we have heard over the course of 10, 15 years, we have heard repeatedly the issues of the potential of Maldives being an offshore banking power. That's a term that has been thrown around for a decade or so. I understand that, but it has not happened. So, for a person who has been in this sector for so long, Governor, in your opinion, the sound and the fury about offshore banking and other such things happening in our financial sector, we have not taken any steps so far. So why is it? Is it too late? Have the ship sailed, or are there other factors that are holding us back?
Thank you, Athif. First of all, I would also like to congratulate Janah and the team for a very successful series of these webinar series. Going to your question, I would have to take up from where Mr. Jaleel and Mr. Bandhu just left. If an investor, foreign investor, is considering investing in the Maldives, be it offshore financing or any financial services, or even any investment in the real sector for that matter, that foreign investor will choose the Maldives over other options available for such investors, considering so many factors about the macroeconomy of the country. So whether or not this country and the macroeconomy is conducive or a stable economy where the investments can be recovered or profits can be made so that the capital invested can be recovered. So for that, we have in the international arena what we call credit rating agencies. The rating agencies rate the sovereign, the country, and they give a rating, and considering the rating, it tells the health and the stability of that particular country for potential investor looking at investing in that country. So I think that's an important factor and area that we all need to openly discuss and think about. Because when we are talking about our domestic issues, when we are talking about the issues within our country, very rarely and most of the time we do not consider, or we are not aware how the outside world, how a foreign investor looks at the daily events that are happening in the country. I'm referring to the political instabilities, I'm referring to the weaknesses in the institutions, I'm referring to the financial corruption. So all these factors amount to the rating and the stability and also the favorability of the country for investors. So I think that that's an important factor that Mr. Jaleel has highlighted. We all have to go back to the drawing board and start from the beginning. Where have we gone wrong, and what are the inherent weaknesses in our macroeconomy? We are talking about high deficit to GDP. We are talking about high debt to GDP. We are talking about current account deficit exceeding 20% of GDP. We are talking about high inequality within Malé and the atolls, and we are talking about weak institutions, and we are talking about the environmental vulnerabilities, and we are talking about the low reserves of the country. So all these factors combined, we would achieve a better rating, a better outlook of our economy. So long story short, to answer the question, why financial institutions and why foreign direct investments and why other kind of capital inflows are not being attracted to our economy rests on the answers to, what I have just highlighted, the country sovereign rating of the country, which looks at all these factors.
Thank you, Naseer, Governor, and I think you very well described the importance of sovereign rating. I'm going to come back. We're going to come back to you on that. We have some more questions on that front. Where just before I go to the next question, Bandhu mentioned about the bankruptcy law, and which is a very important law that we require now, especially under the current circumstances. Also, on the preferential, the treatment on the public and private sector entities. I think, and if we do a diagnostic test on the entire economy, we would find so many things that we need to address. So I think by the end of today's deliberations, we would be able to identify some very interesting points. With that, I will proceed to ask my next question to my co-moderator, Mr. Athif. I have a very simple but a very important question to you, Mr. Athif. My question to you is, will the post-COVID Maldives economic recovery be shaped like a V or a U or an L? I'm giving you 3 letters.
Naseer, thank you, Janah. Sorry, and thank you, Naseer, for that question. Janah, sorry, I left my crystal ball behind, so I do not really have the ability to look into the future. But this is brand new territory. Nobody has a playbook for this. Nobody. We are all, not only here in the Maldives, but around the world, even the international multilateral agencies are learning this as we go along. So there is no real, there's really no real playbook that can be brought into play. But let me try and address that, those three letters. If by a V, you are referring to a sudden quick recovery, then I'm afraid I will have to say no. In 2000, after the tsunami in 2005, our GDP, the rate of our growth dropped to minus 8.1% in the year 2005. Much like IMF is predicting 8.9 for this year, minus 8.9. But the following year, in 2006, we recovered. Our rate of growth jumped 19.9%. Can we have something like that this time? I would like to see that, but I don't think that is really possible or practical. So not a V. Then people talk about L-shaped recovery. I have to admit that I had to go down and actually look at what this means. Now, and an L-shaped recovery seems to me that you're talking about, after you come down and then you flatten, that there's really no real room for coming back or going up there where we were before. A period of doom and gloom where everything happens, at a much lower pace for a long and extended period of time. I am by nature, half glass full kind of person. So I don't really want to posit that kind of scenario. Even I don't want to admit that I want to think about it. But the economy will definitely go through a structural readjustment. A structural readjustment that will be felt by everybody. It will be felt. The government has to think about a structural readjustment. They cannot run this number of ministries with this number of political portfolios with this kind of salaries being given. Private enterprises, personal attitudes, how we spend, all of these things will have to change. But no, I don't believe it will be an L-shaped curve as well. It has to be, we have to hope for a U-shaped recovery. But, and a U-shaped recovery, but not again, not from recovering on the right side of that U, that will not rise as steeply as the left side had come down. The U shape will rise, and it will rise slowly. The angle will be greater between the bottom and the recovery line. But it is also important to say here, I think, that we have to predict a bright future. We have to give people hope. We have to offer an optimistic outlook for people to get up, for people to be motivated, for people to start working. We cannot at the end of the day say that it will be doom and gloom. And so by nature and as a matter of looking at the future, I believe it will not be a V. It will be a U. We will recover. It will take time. The recovery will take time. It will be a painful recovery.
Oh, thank you. We have had a very hard landing, unexpected, big damage. Recovery is going to be long. It's going to be gradual, but we all need to work together with a collective effort. And we need to put that effort, for the benefit of everyone, for the nation, right? That is how we can get over this.
I believe, Janah, that I have to ask you a question now. You have
okay.
Okay. The Maldives, the MNCAI was the first and the only Association, I believe, who did the impact assessment of COVID-19. I was privileged enough to be part of the people who were asked to have a look at the report before you published it. It has been published and it has been made available to external parties as well here. Part of that report spoke about the real difficulties that your members, the larger contractors, the construction industry will face because of non-payment of bills on time, especially from state contracts. So everybody in all other countries, they're talking about infrastructural investments to stimulate the economy, and the state is also looking at this. So how big a challenge is that for your industry and for the contractors as a whole, this issue of non-payment, and therefore the industry not being able to perform to the level that you can, in fact, to get the recovery going?
Thank you very much for that question. As you know, on April 26th, after COVID hit, even when China started announcing about the pandemic, we started looking at our industry and how to prepare ourselves. So on March 16th, as president of the National Association of Contractors, I wrote letters to the governor of MMA, to the finance minister, even the president and the economic minister, identifying certain areas that needs to be looked at. So one of the issues that we raised was there was the budget for infrastructure projects for this year was budgeted for MBR 10 billion. So we questioned the government with all this, forecast and the world going through this situation. Would the government be able to keep tendering new projects, or rather could you temporarily stop some of the projects and then just continue executing the projects that had been awarded? So when we did the survey, we found out that the contracted projects through the state was about 2.72 billion. So the next question comes, how many contractors were involved in these contracts? So we got that number on the report, and we want to make sure that we do not want the country to entirely stop the 7 billion of the amount that was not contracted yet. But we advise the government that they should hold it for a while, and when the funds come in or when the economy starts recovering, then they could start contracting those. So the question was, how would they pay to our contractors who were executing these projects worth almost $3 billion? When we started entering the month of April, May till June, I think we were all right. We were, even the ministry had been paying on time, and with a lot of effort, it was working well. But I think the challenges are immense, and at least what we want to find out now, and even today I had a meeting with the Ministry of Planning and our board. The question is not only the government, even the private sector. They are also facing the private clients. They are also facing a cash crunch. So what we have to look at on the overall situation is how can we look at this problem on a like a periodic basis. So we understand that there are difficulties. We understand there are challenges. So I also have been participating with board members of FIDIC, which is the International Engineers Guild, which has the FIDIC contracts. And so I have been even participating in my international capacity as the president. So what we have found out is that a new clause coming into the to the FIDI contracts, which they are advising contractors and governments and private sector, if you go for a FIDI contract, to appoint an adjudication committee. So it's okay, they have the adjudication process, they also have the arbitration process, they have the legal process, but they bring a new system where every contract should stipulate that they have an adjudication committee from the client side, from the contractor side, an independent consultant or an independent, like a adjudicator. So instead of waiting for issues to grow big, like payment issues or even other, approval issues, they should sit every month or on a periodic short-term basis and resolve those issues. Not wait 7 months and then find out whether that contractor hasn't been able to pay their workers because, the payments didn't come for 7 months. It is like, you have to check, you have to sit, you have to identify those issues and then address those issues on a periodic basis. That is not, that doesn't, prolong for a very long gap. So at least you should sit, you should talk, you should find the solution within a 30 or 45-day period, so that you can address the issue. Either if the client cannot pay, you should stop that project. If there are issues of consultants not approving the certificates, if there are issues of, for example, state projects, we have a lot of issues. Minister of Finance would want to pay the money, but he is, his hands are tied because the client or the line ministry might not send those certificates to the minister for the payment on that, within the stipulated timeline in the contract. Consultants are unable to visit the islands and then approve those the required certification to the contractor. And there are so many bottlenecks, so many holes hurdles at every level. So I think with this kind of adjudication committee, we would be able to overcome that issue, identify the issue and discuss transparently, openly, and then resolve. So I think we need to take that step. Unless we take that step, the contractors would keep calling line ministries, they would keep calling the finance ministry, they would keep asking help from everyone they know of. So I think instead of that, we should be more systematic. Right now the system is that when we most of the contractors send their invoices to various departments or ministries, they have to then go behind an individual or a department to find out the status of their invoice, which is a very tough situation for everyone. So I think it is very important that identified people with their names or appointments are done on each contract, so that they know very clearly, okay, this is the committee that would represent the tender board or that would represent the particular contractor with an independent adjudicator, so that the three parties can sit and resolve the matter on the spot. I think that is how we should address this. And people are suffering, yes, they are going through a tough time because there are delays in payments, not only the government, even the private sector. It's a very tough situation, as you can understand. So with that response, are you okay? Then I move on to my next question. Are you all right with that? Okay. I will proceed to ask my next question to Sujatha. Right. You okay, Sujatha? You ready for it? Your mic. You're ready for it, right? Okay. My question to you would be, sustainable social safety net is seen as a must for a sustainable and productive economy. One where the unemployed and the unfortunate are held and assistance is provided. Perhaps in the absence of such a social security net, many had sought to avail themselves of their contribution in the retirement scheme during the course of the pandemic. In your opinion, how important is that we craft a social security system, and what are the important aspects of such a system for sustainable economic recovery?
Thank you. And thank you for having me here, first of all. And I'll just dive into the question. I think we do have a number of social assistance programs that's going on in the country, but I think we need to focus on exactly what are we trying to achieve from these programs, and how we would actually implement it to get the best benefit out of it. Now, for which we need a well coordinated and integrated social security system. For example, now we have the social assistance and welfare systems, which is set very well. We just have one component or one or two components of the social insurance aspect, which is the pension and the health insurance. And we have some amount of work being done on the labor market interventions, like the job center does some trainings and things like that. But I think these are areas we need to improve, and we need to make sure that all these are integrated well, so that we can actually address the vulnerable and the people in need and bring them up. Now, when we do the social assistance programs, which is very universal and which is accessible to everyone, we are just lifting everyone together. But we need to look at the people who are at the bottom of this and how we could bring them up. So for which targeting becomes very important. Targeted social security programs, which would actually lead to savings also from the government side or the funding side. And if we are able to have contributory systems where we also take the ownership of it, then it becomes more meaningful. We all, I think, we all should agree that when we put in some money, we want to see what's happening there and how we can benefit of it. Then looking at the current situation, yes, there was a lot of debate on whether the pension system should be accessed at this time, because I think one of the reasons is, I think some of our guests has already highlighted, the savings is very minimal here. We do not have our personal savings, and this is savings we see that is accessible. So, but when you look at it, pensions is actually a very long-term thing. We are saving for a very long-term benefit that we would be availing at the time of retirement. And it would be a very poor substitute for unemployment benefit, because when you look at your pension accounts now, it's not that much. I mean, how we cannot sustain. We could withdraw some amount of it now, but then at what cost? Your retirement savings would be considerably depleted when you look at withdrawing now. So these are considerations we need to have while we talk about balancing today's needs by tomorrow's future savings. And I think another aspect I would like to mention here is about we have a very young population. Right now, it's about just 5% of our population is over 65. And we see that we have a pretty generous basic pension. In pension systems, basic pension is the pillar zero, where we're trying to reach the most vulnerable people, where we are trying to maintain some just mainly to focus on the most vulnerable part of the population. And on top of that, we have the contributory system, which actually would give you the income stability at the time of retirement. So one of the things, I think one of the reasons we see that we have a 5,000 rupiah basic pension, which is relatively high. We are spending about 2% of the GDP on, our on this aspect. But when you look at it, 2% of GDP on 5% of the population, you look at it after about during 2050, I think our aging population would increase to 16%. increasing the expenditure accordingly will not be possible. So this 5,000 at 2050, I don't think would have much value. So we need to think about the inflation factors and all this. So it becomes very important to save, to contribute to this system, and to make your retirement secure. Similarly, the need for unemployment benefits and for labor market interventions is very important. And I think our government has been pretty active on it, and we are already working on certain projects where I'm also involved, where we're trying to, bring these laws in which would actually which we would like to see it drafted in such a way that this interventions would happen as and when needed, targeted and properly monitored. I think that would be my say on this, on your question. I hope I have covered it. Yeah.
Thank you, Sujatha. Thank you for that. I think we have gone through the first round of questions for this webinar. Minister Jaleel, because I had insisted that that we put you on the spot, we had asked you the question on how to get back to that curve. So let me, the second question, so I had asked it before. So let me start the second round by putting Mr. Saleem on the spot. Mr. Saleem, are you ready? Okay, so Bandhu, you will need to, yes. Okay, Bandhu, the first question was about, what are the potential areas of diversification, and where do we have economic, comparative advantage? And you mentioned fisheries as an area that we would have comparative advantage. But today, in today's world, we do not have to limit our imagination, let's say our imagination, to what geography has given us at the start. Our technology, today's technology allows for many, many things to happen. The nature of the leaps and bounds that technology have taken has allowed many things to happen and many nations to forge comparative advantage over time. So, Mr. Saleem, so what are the what else? Where else can we create comparative advantage so that we can diversify the economy?
Yeah, thank you for that question. As we had discussed this, fisheries still remains at a, I would say, very traditional level. We are exporting almost same amount of finished products to the rest of the world. It is not because of the catch of skipjack, but also is a methodology. One has to look again, chartering Indian Ocean tuna fleet and bringing fish to our shores and start packing and export. Why can't we do it? The reason is it requires amount of capital to buy, process and export. And that will be a way we should move forward. At the same time, the traditional fishery, who is getting whole in-line benefit, will continue to do their part. But in other words, we are going more matured, expansionary manufacturing process to feed the world market in canned tuna, which has a demand still, which is being unfilled, especially during these days. And after that, I would like to see whether we can rekindle some re-export business, packaging or bringing from production bases here and repacking, repackaging, relabeling and export to the countries where there is a demand. have we done some exploration? I think it is worthwhile to do it, and see what can we do it. So what are the products that we can do? I have no clue as the magic crystal ball is not real, but I think we have to do some work on it and see what are the possibilities of this bundling together, bringing and then re-exporting it to our countries that requires. I should stop, Mr. Athif. Does it satisfy you?
Oh, thank you, Bandhu. I think out of the box, solutions are very important, and diversification will have to happen to bounce back. And in the long term, I think it's very important for us to think differently. And right now, the whole world is in competition because every economy wants to get back and keep rolling. So it's not like Maldives only, right? So I think we have to do a lot of work, a lot of thinking, and I think a lot of planning needs to be done more than ever. My next question would be to Naseer, Governor. In light of the increased spending on health and decline of government revenues, what other options are available to bridge the financing gap, in addition to bilateral donors and multilateral donors like the World Bank, IMF, and ADB?
Yes, we are facing a situation where the government fiscal revenue has declined to almost a very, since all the resorts and the guest houses are being closed, the foreign exchange revenue has been at zero for the past 3 months. And with that, the government is faced with increased expenditure on the health facilities and other spending on the civil service and existing infrastructures. We have heard and read from the news or various donors like the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and IMF contributing almost $30 million. In addition to that, we have not had any financing of significant nature. As we face the current situation, there is an estimated 15 to 20% of GDP financing need. So we are talking about at least 750 or $800 million at the minimum, even if you are considering 15% of GDP. 750 to $1 billion. That's the total financing need of the country at this moment. And with a very low track record of attracting this kind of financing. So mind you, we're talking about $800 to $1 billion, which is a significantly large amount considering a small economy like ours with very low reserves. But still, we have no other option than attracting or borrowing from abroad at this moment, because if we are not able to attract financing from external sources, the existing external debt has to be financed through domestic sources, which again dents the, it further reduces the reserves, existing reserves, and that will put pressure on the exchange rate as well. So for that reason, there is a need for external borrowing, and whether there is a possibility or whether the government can attract this kind of financing. Yes, we can, but again, it all comes down to the cost of borrowing with the kind of credit rating that we have and the recent downgrading by the Moody's and also the Fitch ratings, we may not be able to attract financing at reasonable or low rates. There is also possibility of untapped financing source, which is the Islamic financing. Sovereign sukuk can be issued, and there are investors in the global economy who would have an appetite for investing in Sharia compliant Islamic securities. So these are the some of the fronts that are available as far as financing is concerned, even for the public sector and the private sector of the country at this moment.
Thank you, Governor. I would like to ask the next question to Janah, the president of MNACI. The construction industry has been the fastest growing for the past 5 years. In some years, the industry has grown by 27%. For the past 5 years, the average growth is 17%, which is huge. But the share, that's a growth rate. But the share in the in GDP remains modest, around 5 to 5.5%. We saw this large, fast growth happening when this large infrastructure projects was happening in the country. But these large infrastructure projects were financed by foreign banks outside the country, undertaken by foreign companies, with all the resources, including material and labor, brought in by foreign parties. At the end of the day, when the project is finished, we see the project, the concrete on the ground. The contractor demobilizes, and what is retained in the economy is very low. We saw very minimum or next to nothing involvement of the actual local companies, of the actual local contracting companies in these large projects. But we know that our contracting companies today are mature companies who can undertake large-scale infrastructure projects, including what we have seen as underwater restaurants and rooms in some of our resorts. So my question to you, as the long-term president for several terms and also the current president. So how do we reconstitute? How do you think about how do you change it so that what happens in the construction sector is something more local and gets retained more in the economy?
Well, thank you, Athif, for that question. So the Maldivian construction industry is industry as a whole is divided into three major categories. That is the government PSIP projects, public infrastructure projects, plus the commercial housing projects. Then you have the resort development and private sector housing. What happens is the floodgates of this country are very porous and open, even for foreign contractors to come at any time and do work. We had been, even during Minister Jaleel's time, at the Ministry of Economic Development, we did draft a very good foreign contractors regulation, if I may recall, which has a very good, policies for a foreign entrant to come and compete with local contractors in this country. However, at different stages, at various stages, we see that these regulations are bypassed, and a lot of foreign contractors are being allowed to move in for reasons that are beyond our understanding. We are sometimes told that it is because they come with foreign finance and contractor finance, or foreign government funded finance. So, all right, these are all good things. So what we had proposed at that time was, if a foreign contractors come with construction finance, well and good, they can come and work here. But if they come to compete with us for government-funded taxpayer monies projects, they should come and make a joint venture, at least 35% with a Maldivian contractor. So if this has, and also if a foreign contractor has a particular technology that we do not have in this country, for reasons of transfer of technology, they could come and work without a local contractor. However, we see that even groups of plasterers, masons, carpenters from regional countries coming and setting up business in this country and competing in the most critical sector of our economy, which is the micro, small, and medium enterprises. In the construction industry, even this category had been conquered for unknown reasons by even small to medium scale foreign contractors, registered or unregistered. So this is a serious problem in our industry, and this needs to be looked at. And also, what we have been advocating over the years is that any government funded project, it should be given to Maldivian contractors, at least for taxpayers' money funded projects should be local. And also, if there are foreign funded projects, fully funded projects, that also could go to Maldives. As long as there's construction finance, there are government G2G projects, we don't mind foreign contractors coming in. So I think that's the way forward. In short, if we try to go on a microscope and see, okay, these are the projects, these are how it is coming to the country. So these are the projects that should be allocated to local contractors. That is the only way they can grow also, because of course we have a lot to discuss, and in our report we have identified the issues of training, issues of local labor, or if it's on our website, so if you can refer to that, you will understand the enormous, the enormity of issues that we have in our industry. But we're trying to mitigate these issues. We're trying to encourage locals to participate. And you see, what I believe is local entrepreneurship in this industry. There is a huge scope for, especially in the medium to small scale contractors to come in. The only way to encourage them is to regularize, manage foreign contractors coming in and capturing this market. We cannot go, for example, Maldivian contractors, small contractors cannot go into Sri Lanka and take a tiling or an interior contract of a Shangri-La hotel or a Hilton hotel. We cannot do that. They will not allow us to do that. We will need a requirement to register in the Board of Investments, wait several years for approval. That's how it happens. We cannot work in a regional country. However, here in Maldives, they find a loophole in the regulations. I'm not saying that the regulations, the laws, everything is very nice. You can even register in the National Contractors Registration and come and work here. And the biggest reason when we question is that, oh, Maldivian contractors do not have the capacity. How can you say Maldivian contractors? The biggest buildings in Maldives are done by Maldivian contractors. Some of the biggest buildings, some of the best resorts in the country are built by Maldivian contractors. So, I mean, there's no reason why Maldivians cannot perform. We have proven over years that Maldivian, I mean, you compare the quality of a Maldivian contractor's work and the quality of a foreign contractor. Even in resort construction, you can find how good Maldivians are at delivering and performing the right product. I think I can go on speaking, but I think in brief, we need to identify which areas foreign contractors can come in and manage them, properly regulate them, and that's the only way you can retain and let the Maldivian contractors grow and prosper. I will go back and question you now. Is that okay, Athif?
Yes, please.
It's when you co-moderate you and then become panelists, this is what happens. How do you foresee the COVID-19 crisis affecting income inequality and employment situation in the Maldives?
Okay, so thank you for the easy question. Now, in the cricketing world, that will be called a googly. Let me first try to look at try to address the employment issue. Employment, especially employment today, is one of the biggest issues that we have to face. We know, especially because of the Ministry of Economic Development and UNDP issued a report saying that 44,000 workers from resorts alone have been negatively impaired during this period. And we saw, as the COVID-19 situation came in and as the resorts started to close their doors, the employment organization and the ministry and the Ministry of Economic Ministry and as well as the Tourism Ministry tried their best to ask employers to hold on to their staff. But today, while the June report said that there were 44,000 laid back, not totally laid back, but negatively impaired during that period, that we know more have been laid off in July as well. So employment is something, and also let us not, even if you don't want to talk too long as we will not have the time, let us also acknowledge the issue of expatriate labor and the amount of labor-related problems we are having. On the employment front, my biggest fear is that during this period where people are desperate for work, so many have been laid back, so many have been sent home, so many have been put on leave. As the economy slowly opens up, as some of the resorts are slowly opening up, as businesses are slowly trying to get on their feet, we have our pool of employment who are desperate for work, who will, have been in pain for quite a long period of time, in desperate circumstances, even having to walk out of their homes and the housings that they have been working. So my biggest concern on the employment side is that unless our regulators are very, very aware and very cognizant of what is going to happen, I fear that a lot of our labor, especially local labor, might be sort of forced to go into employment situations without the best. We never had the best, but without adequate protection on the work that they do or the wages that they will be paid. And this will be something we will all need to be very, very careful of. Your question of the income inequality. Income inequality in economic terms is measured by something called the Gini coefficient or the Gini index. There have been reports that 60 companies paid 85% of the tax, but our income tax has just started. I think it started last month. Until the income tax matures, we will really have no idea about the income inequality. I have read before some World Bank or other reports talking about 0.33, which is not so bad, as the Gini coefficient goes from 0, which is fully everybody shares wealth equally, to 1, where all wealth is held by just one person. Some countries, that we are around 0.33. My personal feeling is that it will be higher, around 0.4. But we really will not know our income distribution level until our income tax regime matures. Will it become more unequal during this period? Yes, I'm afraid so. It will become, it is the potential of it becoming more unequal during this post-COVID period is definitely there, as people look for work even at reduced wages, and as employers will know that work can be obtained easier at lower rates. So I'm afraid our income equality level might in fact go down during this period. Okay, I think after having said that, I need to bring Sujatha on now. Sujatha, I have read recently of pension funds in Japan making huge investments in infrastructure. Our pension fund does not. Yet it is 10 billion plus, almost 600 million plus 600 plus million US dollars pension fund. In your opinion, can our pension fund, should our pension fund also, should the laws change so that due to our pension fund, this 10 billion rupiah can also look at investment in infrastructure, long-term investments?
Thank you. Thank you, Athif. Yes, pension funds has actually started investing in infrastructure and alternate investments. And this is it has started not too long ago, but it started now, and we see a lot of countries are diversifying into other alternate investments. But I think one thing we have to be very mindful of is pension funds are funds of individuals, and we have to be very, very careful when we are investing this. So for which, we need to have the proper legal structure, the proper data that is required. I completely acknowledge and agree that the financial market here locally is not very well developed. However, the information or the data on the other alternate investments are also not very readily available here to do our research on the investment gains and things like that. So these are few considerations we have. We've been discussing this for quite some time now. What would be the way forward? When and how are we going to do this? But this for which we are exploring different options. But again, the main concern is the legal infrastructure where we have to make sure that people's funds are protected, and we have to have that much of information on the market, how the investments would yield at the end. So while pension funds invest, I think it's paramount on pension funds to be the safety of it, of the funds, and the liquidity, of course, for payout. So these are the considerations. Having said that, we are already looking at options. We are working with experts from World Bank and other places on developing these aspects, and we would be looking into changing the law wherever possible to facilitate this.
Thank you very much. So in other words, once you have the legal framework in place, you will be able to take more independent decisions to while taking your decisions on investment portfolios and other investment related decisions around the world or even locally. You would be more independent to securely take those decisions, right? So you need that legal framework. right?
Yes, one thing is independent to securely take the decisions, plus legal framework on on protecting these also. I think
That's
that
right.
is very important.
Yes.
When you
So that gives the security for the
yes,
members of the fund that they are fully protected as well, right? So it
yeah,
goes a full cycle, right? Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. This concludes the second. Sorry, this concludes the second round of the questions, and now we go for the third round and the final round, and the final round of all the 10 episodes as well. My question goes to Ms. Jaleel. Ms. Jaleel, foreign direct investment is one of the most important source of private external finance for developing countries like us. Foreign direct investments are significant as we need funding in infrastructure, energy, water, etc., which are key drivers for the economy, even for the private sector, because Maldives is a capital-starved market and a very costly, in terms of borrowing money, it's very costly for the private sector also. So what can Maldives do better when everyone else is also trying to attract foreign direct investments under this current COVID-19 pandemic? What can Maldives do better to attract more foreign direct investments post-COVID-19?
Thank you. But before I get into the FDI, I'd like to make a little contribution to Athif was suggesting about shocks and poverty. I think this is very clear from economic literature, and all literature all over the world. The poor gets hurt first. The poor get hurt first. The poor get hurt most. There is no walk away from that. Even in the most advanced countries, it is like that. And for poorer countries, it is even worse. So I think that link is very clearly established. This is why we should be avoiding macroeconomic imbalances. This is all because of macroeconomic imbalances. Coronavirus came much later. I think I wanted to make that point. I also want to draw the link between the pension funds and the macroeconomy. I mean, just to make it vivid that this is such an important issue. Pension funds, Sujatha was talking, I think she's done a fantastic job. I've known her for a long, long time in that. But I was quite surprised she just picked up only the legal. See, those funds don't work properly unless there is a proper macroeconomic condition for that. It just simply doesn't work. You can have a very fantastic legal system, but if the real interest rates are negative, if financial conditions are deteriorating, foreign exchange markets are in dire constraints, no, these funds don't work. What has been happening to these funds? They are investing in government, and the government is a borrower who lacks responsibility. We've seen the government, it has lacked responsibility, not just now, for a long, long time. Fiscal responsibility is not a word that Maldivians know, very sadly. There is a very, very serious, this is probably the most serious issue that we have right now. Unless our leaders, unless our governments, unless our parliamentarians understand and appreciate the importance of fiscal responsibility, we're not going to move very fast with income inequity. We're not going to move very fast with pension fund reform. We're not going to do a lot better even in foreign direct investments. I wanted to drag that link between the financial discipline, financial responsibility, and all of those issues that we are talking about. We have a fiscal responsibility bill, but over the last 10, 12 years, it's just been debt on debt on debt. No one has been responsible. I have not seen a single document that says we are going to anchor our debt at 60% of GDP, or we're going to come back to 60% GDP in 5 years' time. No, these are very, very essential things for an economy. With respect to foreign direct investment, no, but before I go into that, this huge compensation payments that we've been making in recent years, large sums. With electoral numbers, my estimates is that these compensation payments are equal to, if not more than 50 to 60% of 2019 total tax revenues. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. How can you attract foreign direct investment? Now, foreign direct investments have two types of investments largely. The first one is called the direct investment. We've seen a bit of that. We've seen a bit of that in the tourism industry. I don't think there is a widespread foreign direct investment in this country, really. But because tourism is the largest sector, obviously you find foreign direct investment. The other is also a very important type of foreign investment, which is the portfolio investment. That's where foreign investors come and invest in local companies. But they should be able to exit whenever they think the capital is not earning enough return. Now, this country doesn't promote that because of our macroeconomic condition. I'm sad, I have to repeatedly come back to this. Because this is, even during my term of office, this was the biggest hurdle I had to promote financial sector performance, deepening the financial sector. Whatever we wanted to do in the financial sector was constrained by weak macroeconomic performance, weak financial conditions. So if you want to promote greater foreign direct investment into this country and get the positive benefits, mind you, they have negative benefits and negative issues and positive issues. So even if we want to get the, the benefits of FDI, we need to first address 1, 2, and 3 is macroeconomic stability. And now it's already too late. It's already too late, without which we will not be able to move on any front. I said it before, this country has a lot of potential to move out of this. And like Athif said, I remember we have to be positive. I'm not being just positive, but I believe that this is possible to get out of this and put the country back into a better path than where we were. Oftentimes what we forget is when we recover from a shock, we fail to understand how much we lost. I told you we've had 16 out of the 40 years. If somebody does the back of the envelope calculation, this country would have been far higher than where we are today if we didn't lose all of that. So what I'm saying is, to promote foreign direct investments, we need a lot of that. We need a lot of that, and selectively, like you were talking about, selectively. I like selectively pick investors, foreign investors that has synergies to rest of the development components or sectors in our economy, and see that our people couldn't compete. These are the kind of considerations that we will be looking at, and invite them. But to do all of this, you need political stability and political togetherness. Foreign direct investors don't come here to go tomorrow. They come to stay. That's direct investors. Portfolio investors, the moment they hear something is going on, they disappear. Overnight, you must have heard the Southeast Asian financial crisis. Money vanishes as you close your eyes and open your eyes. Maldives can't afford to do that because our financial condition is so poor. The central bank doesn't have, this country is the only country that I have seen in my 11 countries list that has the months of reserves, the least. I think the most we had was about 4 months. Most other countries have about 8 months of international reserves today. Barbados, Mauritius, Bhutan, Samoa, Seychelles, Mauritius. Have a look at all of them. Most of them have in excess of 8 months. Much smaller countries than us have that type of reserves. We have just forgotten about sustainability. We just look for today. We've been doing things for today. And as like I said, if we can cruise tomorrow, if we can, we don't want to understand and appreciate that insurance is important. I'll drag in another aspect to this. This time, coronavirus have tested to the limit about corporate social responsibilities. How many people, Athif just said, I was quite shocked. I was looking for labor employment data is the weakest in this country and the most important. But Athif said 40,000 people. So this is what I said, if you have tested the corporate social responsibility, just send them home. This is not right. I think into the future, we have to protect our labor. We have to protect our labor. Some sort of insurance have to come in to protect our labor. They can't be thrown off like that. That's not right. We have savings. The people who are rich have savings. They can come back, they can defer their payments. But the poor laborers, they can't, there's nothing to defer for them. They just live by the day. But we have very conveniently thrown them. That's not right. And the government doesn't have the ability to support this. You know, they can say they have the ability, but we all know the government doesn't have the ability to do this. So basically what I'm trying to say is to link all of this together, income inequity issues, the shocks of poverty, access inequality, pension funds and its use. I think all of these things, a key is macroeconomic stability and put the economy back into stronger, more sustainable foundation and footing.
Thank you, Jaleel. I had really been, from the day we started talking about this session, I've been really wanting to hear that. Thank you for finally laying it out so starkly. But these are all, this is what we all need to hear. And hear very clearly from a person respected and experienced like Jaleel. So thank you for that. It's something we all needed to listen to. Bandhu, you know, the time is running away from us also. But this 44,000 number that has been thrown in by me, you know, it was not created by me. It came in from Economic Ministry UNDP report, but it also only talks about what happened in the resorts, half of which is Maldivian, 22,000 people. And we know there's a lot more out there in the guest houses, in travel agent, insurance, and many, many more people. So, Bandhu, what are the challenges? I had also discussed a little bit about, protecting their rights as they come back. So what are the challenges? What are the options of bringing back these people whose employment have been really badly impacted, hurt? Bandhu, you
Mike.
The Maldivian labor law from the inception does not recognize and treat furlough or laying of labor. But the government employers can take a no pay leave. So this is a very difficult situation, you know. So the furlough or laying of labor is any industrial country or any organized labor will have to face when there is a hardship. We are no exemption for the first time. And how do we address this? The address is, government has said to the tourism industry, look, here is some money, don't lay people, you pay them and look after for 6 months. It is not a long-term solution, it is an immediate solution, but having given that, you know, when is the recovery? This is the question that you and I don't know. But to me, it seems that recovery will be very slow. It may take 3 to 4 years to recover pre-COVID level. With that also, we are going to see dropping in income of the resorts, dropping in wage rate, differing of loan repayments and interest. These are the typical issues that will come. Plus, who is going to fund working capital of the resorts which is now closed? In my opinion, this working capital requirement will be within the range of 75 to 80 million US dollars, you know, to kickstart for the industry. If we happen to this, we can take them back. But I would argue that resorts also will look into bottom line again. That means they will take less labor at lower wage, and everybody has to share the burden to learn to live what we can give you at best. And this may not happen, but I would expect this is to be the norm after this November. We may not focus it very big. That means we have to have a concrete discussions among the industry, among the government authority, among the general public, create awareness that difficult times are starting and it is not going to be not soon. So what we do? We have to have a dialogue across the board, including professionals, medicals, engineering, construction industry. What is going to happen to this? Our living is going to change as a result of this COVID. Already it has changed, but for the time being, we don't feel our pockets. One could argue because we didn't spend on the restaurants for last 1 month, still we have little savings, but the savings might disappear very soon as we become the normal, what's called new normal. And for the medium term, I think for the short term, I think we have yet to go up to December and see where do we stand. How does the industry recover? How are they coming? What is the yield? So numbers may be there, but if the yield is not there, again, we are not addressing the issue. So I say they will take it gradually, the Maldivians. At the same time, they will also start laying off foreign labor. This is going to happen, in my opinion, in the industry. Are you satisfied, Mr. Athif?
It's a very good intervention, I think. Bandhu, I had a call from a friend of mine today, and he was saying, Janah, do you know how the economy is surviving? I said, how? He said, in Korea also, they live, a lot of people live on credit card, because they get credit over several months, 2 or 3 months, in countries like that. So we also living like that. Nobody pays rent. We are living on, in this period, nobody pays rent on time. So you automatically, force people to give you credit on your rent for 2-3 months. You don't pay your other, other utilities, that's also on credit. So it's like an artificial situation we have created. And then, just as you said, we will hit the reality very soon. Come yes. November, come December, if we don't do a strong intervention, I think times would be hard. And that is what we need to discuss. And as Jaleel said, the solution is there. And I'm sure with experts like you and a collective effort with entrepreneurs, employees, employers, I think that's what we're trying to do, have a good dialogue, open, transparent, accountable dialogue. My next question would be to Naseer. Fitch Ratings have downgraded Maldives' long-term foreign currency and local currency issuer default ratings to B from B positive. And also they have revised the outlook to negative from stable. This is understood considering how hard the economy is hit and the deep recession which we are going through, especially with tourism hit so hard. How important it is for us to keep a stable credit rating for us, and what steps do we need to take for us to keep the rating stable under the current circumstances?
If, 2 points. First point that I want to highlight is we have to understand that it's not only the Maldives who is in the pandemic situation. Almost all the countries in the world are facing, and some countries are in more dire circumstances. So, second point, I mean, we very often hear from the medical experts that the most vulnerable to the COVID-19 is a patient with existing health conditions, apart from the age. Even if you are young, if you have existing health conditions, you are more affected by the COVID. The situation is similar to any economy or country like ours. As we have highlighted earlier, when we started, or when coronavirus or COVID-19 hit the country, we already had existing health issues. We already had a lot of problems in the economy, and Mr. Jaleel has just highlighted it very, comprehensively. So that is why we have been downgraded by the Fitch. That is why we have been downgraded by the Moody's. Mr. Jaleel has said that compared to countries like Seychelles, which is a much smaller economy than ours, even their reserves level is relatively higher than in our case. So relatively lower reserves, high debt to GDP, and high fiscal deficit, and very weak institutions, and very weak public finance management systems. So these were our existing health issues when we hit Corona, when we were hit with Corona. And that is why we have been downgraded. Not all the countries have been downgraded. So that is why we have been downgraded. So back to your question, how do we how do we recover, or how do we get a better rating? Definitely, in a very near future, we might not be upgraded. But in order to prevent further downgrading, we would have to take into account, and we would have to seriously talk about this, including the politicians, including the tactical people in the country. We cannot continue business as usual as we were before. So if we are to recover and return back better, or build back better, we would need to bring about changes that are necessary. And this would be the perfect opportunity for us. And if we are not able to, and if we fail to bring about these changes during this pandemic, we might be never able to. So this would be the perfect opportunity for us to keep or put our house in order and restructure debt, and strengthen our public finance management, strengthen our institutions, at least start the work on it, and improve our institutions, and as well as the ways we can build reserves. So the answer lies with how well we can come up with these reforms.
Thank you, Naseer. That was really insightful. Like a patient and economy with pre-existing conditions, of course, has to bear a larger hit, a greater brunt. My next question is to Janah. We have also just getting to 6 o'clock, so we
will go until 6:15. Yeah, because I want to have some closing remarks. All right.
Yeah. So my question is to Janah. You have talked about the changes to FIDIC and the importance of getting things attended to faster, and not keeping contracts and issues running longer in order to solve some of the issues. So will the COVID-19 pandemic cause major delays in the completion of both public and private projects? Will it also allow for, or will it result in long-term delays in payments as well?
I think a very good question, Athif. The pandemic locked down several countries. The supply chain was heavily affected. The lockdown also resulted in local transportation being held back, with the movement completely stalled for a period of time. The question is, how do the state sector or the private clients apply these? In some countries, I was speaking to the Malaysian Federation president and the regional federation, as well as the FIDIC CEO. So now, when it comes to the application of the number of days lost, some countries are applying the announcements or the we should be, because the contractors have had to have idle time, and that's a big loss for them. And we are not going to ask for a compensation, a financial compensation as such for the lost time. So the least the governments and the clients could do for the contractor is reward them with some additional time. I hope that answers you. And I have a question for you. Maybe you can briefly answer, or you want to skip it? Your mic.
Let's
try
very
quickly
briefly
answer, right?
Yeah. Let's try.
My question is, social distancing and stay-at-home measures, will it change the economic behavior of Maldivians, or human behavior, in front of economic behavior? How much they spend, how much they go out, how much they, spend time with friends.
Definitely. It has already changed. It has already changed. We see this change. The state has run online. We have seen this. Businesses are going online. Even as shops open, the number of customers who can walk in to shops, restaurants are few. The economic thinking, how much office space do I need to rent to run my company, that will change. How much office space does the government need, that will change. We all know now we don't have to converge to one particular point at 8 o'clock in the morning to run the economy or the state. We know that. So social distancing, the new lessons that we learn will change how we run the economy, not only the economy, but the society as well. But I also believe that human beings are social animals. Ultimately, we will, when we feel safer, we will meet our friends, we will socialize. Let's hope more safely. But how we run the economy will definitely change. We see already some of the bigger companies, they have some of their staff outside the country already. So there's no doubt about it. Thank you for that.
I think you have to.
Let me ask this question of.
We have a double role, each one of us.
So the final question, can I ask Sujatha? So how did the pension fund prepare for the COVID-19 pandemic to protect the investments? Or did you do anything specific, and what is the overall experience?
We were very prudent in our way forward. We looked at the risks that were immediately there. One was a liquidity risk. Risk was there because we do make pension payouts even now. And then the possibility of a significant decline in the returns and default by the investments, So these were the main risks that we identified, and we immediately did maintain about 3 months liquidity so that we will not that risk is mitigated. And then we implemented a very very thorough investment monitoring program whereby we were reaching out to the investors and actively working with the investors. But as you know, most of our funds are invested in the financial sector, and a lot of it with the T-bills and the government. So we were working very closely to follow up and check on to make sure that we were not there will be no defaults, and then the payments were coming on time. We do have there could be some decline in the dividends. We do foresee this for the next year, but right now it's a bit difficult to say. We are, I mean, the companies that we have invested are quite fundamentally strong, so we hope that it would not be too much of a hit on the fund. And we see that the contribution, it's really different to see. We saw that there was a decrease in the contribution. We talk about labor market and how this reacts to the pandemic. We saw about 20 to 25% decrease in the contribution around April, May. But now we see that the contributions are stabilizing. So we would actually, it would be a very interesting study to do how the reaction happened, how the contribution picked up within this time, and to see whether there would be further decline down the road, maybe in the next few months. So this is how we've been looking at the numbers and trying to keep a very close contact with our invested funds and to follow up on a regular basis. So these are the main things that we've been working on.
Very interesting observations as well. We are all learning as we progress under the current scenario. Thank you very much for your very insightful, knowledge in this field and which we have shared today. I will come back to you for the closing remarks. So I will now give closing remarks one by one. I will just mention your name and maybe 1 or less than 2 minutes, because the prayer time is at 6:24 p.m. So I will try to finish latest by 6:20. So I will give the first opportunity of the closing remarks to Mr. Naseer.
Thank you, Janah. As as this is the final and the last episode, as we have mentioned, I would like to congratulate you and your team for this successful, very informative. I've had the opportunity to listen to some of the webinars that you have conducted in the past, and it has been very informative, and congratulate and thank you for that. As the very last closing remarks, I would say that let this pandemic and let this crisis be an opportunity for us to think back and take our economy back from the ventilator and then build it better by bringing about the required structural reforms in our economy. In the public finance management, in the governance, and financial corruption, and all other factors that we need to reform in the economy in order for us to not continue business as usual. If we decide not to, and if we decide to ignore all these factors, as soon as we get our resorts, filled with guests and tourists, then we would have not learned at all, and we would be in the situation very quickly again. So let's hope that we would be able to work all together and bring these changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Sujatha, please.
Thank you for this opportunity. I think this has been very, very insightful, and I think you've been doing a great job with all these webinars, which has been very informative. Like Naseer mentioned, I've also listened to a few, and it's been very informative. I think on this, my concluding remark would be, we see a lot of numbers happening now. Like I just mentioned, the pension numbers are really, how is this labor market reaction? And so it's going to be a very interesting learning experience for us to work. And I totally agree, to build back better and look at where the wastage is happening or where the gaps are, and fill the gaps. Have a proper social security network where we bring the more vulnerable people up, and let them not fall through the gaps that is there. So I think this is the time we need to think of a holistic approach to social security and the financial sector of the nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Continue your good work, and it's our hope that the pension fund will continue to benefit the people of this country always. Athif, please.
Thank you very much for first allowing me to to work with you on this session and to prepare this. Well, the thing I think we cannot lose this opportunity. It's a pandemic, sure, it's a disaster, sure, but it's also an opportunity. We have to build back better. We have to come back better, and as Sujatha has mentioned, with a better social security net. For without looking after our people, it is really no looking after the economy.
Thank you very much for that, Athif, and I think you have broken the record. I did all the 9 episodes, moderated, facilitated on my own. Thank you for accepting my invitation to be my partner today, moderating this. So you will hold this record for being the only partner moderating this with me. Thank you, and very insightful and very helpful. It was really good. Mr. Saleem, your concluding remarks,
thank you,
please.
Janah. I think from the discussions, it appears to me that fiscal imbalances continued for quite some time in this country and will continue unless quick actions are being taken place. Second, the weak reserve position of the corporate sector is a concern. Third, the wage sector, which we have inadequate data for very long time, needs to be adjusted, and people has to be educated about how this wage sector is going to adjust itself from the corporate sector or from the tourism sector. So what is the shining star? Undoubtedly, the shining star is fisheries sector, where they have been earning and they have been doing good landings. So I think, we had to expand again on the fisheries sector by giving long-term credit to invest in fishermen's boats and shore facilities. If all of us get together with the government, public and investors have a dialogue, I'm sure we can overcome more smoothly in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jaleel?
Thank you, Janah. First of all, I would like to join the rest of the colleagues in not only appreciating the great work that you have been doing to bring the issues closer to the hearts of the public. I have certainly learned a lot from today's expert discussion. What I have to say first, second, and the last is don't lose this opportunity again. This is a great opportunity. Oftentimes when you're in the valley, you get the best time to do things. Don't lose this opportunity. Take those extraordinary measures, bold measures, work together, and try to learn from the lessons of experience. On the lessons of experience, I'd like to, highlight this one. Building better is what I heard after tsunami so much. Let's not just say this word. Let's try to live up to this word. Building better, better. All of that was written in so much of literature in 2004. I still vividly remember. So this time, what we should be definitely doing is, when we build better, try to find low unit cost of development. Bring in lower unit cost of development. That's the only thing that can sustain our economy. If we can't do this, Naseer, I'm sorry, this will be business as usual. Thank you once again for having me.
Thank you very much. Very good observations, very good advice, Bandhu, and you and everyone, Mr. Jaleel, and we have to take a great leap forward, right? As we that usual famous term. I think I have. So in the end, we try to take some questions. I have one very important question coming from Kali Mursala to Jaleel, which asks you, what's your opinion on sorting out NPLs of banks which have been on the books for decades? Jaleel, would you like to answer that, or you could email an answer? Because we're running out of time.
I think I will email an answer if you.
Yeah, okay, all right, that is good. So we don't spend. Yeah. Thank you very much for that. All right, that comes to an end. 10 episodes. It's not been an easy journey. 60 plus. I call the best minds in the country in various industries. It's been a good journey for me to learn from all of you. Back office, I had Ahmed Susan supporting us, our National Federation's executive board member. High Rise supporting us. Isse, our vice president. At some point of time, Shahida, one of our vice presidents, was also supporting us. To this episode, I had the full support of Abdullah Salih, one of our vice presidents. Thank you, the executive board of National Federation of Maldivian Employers. And thank you, VTV, for hosting most of our programs free of charge and giving and spreading our message across to everyone. Next week, we will be inviting all of you once again. All the participants, all the panelists of all the 10 episodes will be inviting. We are writing a book on these 10 episodes, on all that we have deliberated. And we will release this book. I think it's going to be a 200 or plus 250-page book. We will release so that it will be available online and as well as paperback. And I hope it will remain as industrialists, as economists, as analysts, as contractors, as entrepreneurs, how we kept thinking during these various stages of this pandemic. Thank you very much for all the support that the media gave us, giving us coverage on every episode. And I look forward. This series is over. I don't know how, whether a lot of people, a lot of professionals, like I get calls from photographers, from Chefs Guild, and so many other people, asking me to invite them. But then there's that much we could do for a certain period of time. If things go, Allah willing, if things go well, and we have the time to do it, and the effort and the energy, we are all going through, the tough period. So we have to concentrate and give time, a lot of time, to our other businesses and our other engagements. But we will try to start another series if at all possible. That concludes 10 episodes. Thank you very much. It was a really good session, and I have comments coming from a lot of participants and the public that this was one of the best episodes. Thank you, MJ. Thank you, Bandhu. Thank you, Naseer. Thank you, Sujatha. And thank you, Shakoor, Susan. Thank you very much, Isse, Shahida, Abdul Saleh, and
Welcome.
the National Federation of Maldivian Employers Executive Board. Bye-bye. And see you soon, hopefully, on another platform like this very soon.